All right. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to the last day of the 2020 research meeting. And I assure you, we have an excellent lineup for this morning, as we have had on the previous days. Um, our last session features a panel on collaborations, contributions, and barriers in international research. It's obvious to all of us, I suspect, that the challenges to international research and international research collaboration are not small, and they certainly haven't gotten smaller in the last year. Um, so while the challenges are great, I think never have the stakes been higher or the need greater. And so I think this is a really important session for us. Um, international research collaborations are so critical for advancing science. We all need to be thinking about how we can do better despite the current challenges. So we have a wonderful lineup today. We will start with a presentation from Dr. Ning Zhang, who is Vice President for Research at Peking University Health Science Center. Secondly, we will have a presentation from Dr. Philip Lamben, Department of Precision Medicine, School for Oncology and Faculty of Health, Medicine and Life Sciences at Maastricht University. Next, we will have Dr. Kathleen Scotto, Vice Chancellor for Research and Research Training at Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences, Vice Dean, School of Graduate Studies, Rutgers State University of New York, New Jersey. I'm really sorry. And our fourth speaker today will be Dr. Shuk-Mei Ho, Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of Arkansas for Medical Science. So that's our plan. After those four speakers each have spoken, then we will have, I think, plenty of time for questions and discussion. And I would encourage all of the participants to think about using the chat box even early on. We won't address the points in the chat box until after the four speakers have spoken, unless there's a technical issue like we can't hear someone. But it will be good for us to have some things lined up for each of the speakers. So the first speaker, Dr. Ning Zhang, he is actually not able to give this presentation in person because of time zone issues. He has provided us with a recorded presentation, and he's the only speaker that will not be able to participate personally in the question and answer and discussion session. So if you have points to discuss for his presentation, please keep those in mind or place them in the chat box, but he won't be here to address them later, just so people realize that. So we will go ahead now with the pre-recorded presentation from Dr. Ning Zhang.
This is Ning Zhang from Peking University Health Science Center. Today, I would like to talk about research responses to COVID-19 in our university. At the beginning of the year, the spread of the COVID-19 imposes global threat to the health. And when the weather cooled down and the temperature keep on decreasing, and the confirmed cases of COVID-19 spread is keep on increasing. Therefore, we must maintain our ongoing effort to contain this virus spreading. And this virus spreading has posing severe challenges to every single person and aspect of our society. It threats our social governance system, our public health emergency system, our public health prevention and control system. And in our higher education area, we intend to combat this virus through our education, through our research, and also through our medical service as well. In our university, we have established a quick response to the virus spreading through the scientific research project. At the same time, we share our anti-epidemic experience in international exchange and in international conferences. Third, we maintain the active anti-epidemic science popularization by use of virtual technology. At the beginning of the year, our university funded more than 100 research projects to our research faculties. Our projects including the vaccine and the therapeutic drugs, including the emergency prevention and control strategy, and epidemiology analysis, virus detection, and also including the policy and research as well. At the same time, when our faculties are dealing with this COVID-19 in the hospitals, we also share our anti-epidemic experience in international exchange. We have shared our experience with WHO, with United States, United Kingdom, Italy, Brazil, and other countries as well. And also our research works has been published in the medical journals such as Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine as well. In May, we held online conferences for the experience sharing on COVID-19 by ASEAN China University Consortium. Actually, 24 universities from ASEAN countries and 22 universities from China participated in these conferences. And also in March, our medical center had a conference with University of Michigan Ann Arbor. Actually, one team of about 400 medical staffs who are working in the front line in Wuhan City joined this video conference and shared their first-hand experience with these viruses. And also in July, we had this conference with University College of London in Great Britain. Third, we maintained very active anti-epidemic science popularization by use of virtual technology. Peking University Medicine conducted anti-epidemic science popularization through portals, through WeChat, online videos, etc. We published 3 popular science books and 70 related articles, produced 5 short videos, held 2 public welfare lectures, and carried out 6 popular science activities as well. And our suggesting for the further works, including that research, innovation, and inspiration are needed in our higher education and research. And also we need to intensify our networking of administrative offices and also academic departments and supporting systems to ensure collective efforts during the crisis. And international collaboration and solidarity are important more than ever. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will thank Dr. Zhang in absentia and move on next to a presentation from Dr. Philip Lamban. And hello. I understand, Dr. Lamban, that your presentation will be given on a pre-recorded version, but then you are here to participate in the discussion. So we will go ahead with the pre-recorded presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Philippe Lambin, the head of the Department of Precision Medicine in Maastricht University. And today I would like to share with you my experience of getting large European grants during the COVID-19 pandemic. When there is a crisis, it has the advantage to motivate scientists to do something about it. And that's quite important because, as you know, in the academic world, the typical way of thinking is divergent thinking, curiosity-driven, thinking outside the box. While when you start to write a grant, especially if it's a consortium with multiple partners, you need to focus and to move toward a convergent thinking with a clear deadline, focus on project management. And this switch is not always of use with academic scientists, and the crisis helped to focus. Of course, there are also some numerous disadvantages of starting collaboration during COVID-19 pandemic. The first one is probably the tendency to rush to get something done and to compromise on quality. Another point is the time pressure. There are a lot of new deadline appears a few weeks before the deadlines, and we hadn't had so much time to write proper grants. So in my case, having access to university funds for grant writing companies was very important, because you still have to do your academic duties, and having professional companies helping to deal with all the huge administration of those grants was absolutely crucial. Then, of course, as we all know, you cannot travel anymore, so you have to replace face-to-face meetings with Zoom, and sometimes you lose the conversation during breaks or over dinner to try to build a personal relationship. I really like this way of evaluating projects. It's quite very simple. On the horizontal axis, you have feasibility. On the vertical axis, potential benefit. And then you have the bread and butter projects, which are have a high feasibility, the wild card, high potential benefit, but low feasibility, and then the stars. And typically, in a consortium, the tendency to start with a project which is too much high risk, and then you have to push towards higher feasibility. And to do so, having some preliminary work really helps. For example, in March already, we had a website with some artificial intelligence algorithm for COVID-19. When we submit a grant, it was, I'm sure, beneficial. And then you can use your original innovative research platform. For example, in our case, it was AI, radiomics, and living medicine. And then you can also balance your consortium by involving some certain centers with special expertise. And ideally, you end up with a project which is in the stars quadrant. And I put 5% on it because that's the usual success rate of European grants, I guess also NIH grants. This quote says, progress in science depends on new techniques, new discoveries, and new ideas, probably in that order. I really much believe so. I would like to focus a little bit on new techniques because, according to this quote, this is the first step toward new discoveries. And we will all agree that any original methods, technique, platform, which helps you to create new data, but also to capture new data, will be very important, especially in the field of AI. And during the pandemic, is getting good quality original data in large quantities is a real challenge. First, most of the clinical trials are stopped. Then people are working from home. And on the top of this, there's all the privacy rules, which complicate the matter. So in our case, having access to a special tool to get access to those data in multiple centers was extremely beneficial. And we have used this tool in both of the granted subsidies that we got this year on COVID-19. And it's basically called distributed learning of federated database. The principle is that all the participating centers keep their data within the firewalls. No data will leave the hospital nor leave the country. So that gives already a certain confidence. But the data have to be organized in the same way with a common ontology. Then rather than centralizing the data in one centers, you basically send the AI algorithm to the different centers. You build the first model, and then with multiple iterations, you optimize the model until you have convergence. And then you have a final model created, which will be used hopefully. And then you can also, with this method, update it when there is a new technique, a new treatment, etc. So privacy preserving distributed learning, and we have now a large international database network. Then your project is hopefully approved, and then the adrenaline level decrease, and some people would have the tendency to relax too much. And out of experience, we have learned that there are 4 stages during consortium project collaborations. The first one is, I don't have the time. I don't have the time for extra Zoom meetings. I will just do my deliverable, leave me alone. And then you can do that, you know, as leaders. You cannot make any change of the protocol, etc. And then finally, you have, I can help, and we can make a big difference. So this whole trajectory, and you have to reach that final level as soon as possible by using smart meetings, but also identifying success stories. So in conclusions, crises have a lot of disadvantages for collaborations, but it creates focus and opportunity. And you can build on that because there is this energy. Having access to academic funds for strategically important grants helps tremendously. It depends from university to university. Then when you have the first draft of your project, you have to find a balance between feasibility and potential benefit. And I think it's very useful to develop your own metrics to do this evaluation yourself and to balance your project appropriately. Then having preliminary results like a website of new technique, innovative research platforms helps. For example, in our case, we had the Regomix platform, AI platform, Living Medicine. You can convince the reviewers you can do the work. And of course, access to data, high quality, large amount is paramount. And we believe that our true privacy preserving distributed learning helps. And finally, after approval, you still need to build a team. The real work is starting, and then identifying short-term achievements really helps because success is very motivating. On this, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to take any question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Lohmann. What we will do is ask you to put any questions into the chat box or just keep them for yourself for oral discussion at the end of all 4 presentations. And we will go on at this point to hear from Dr. Kathleen Scotto. Welcome, Dr. Scotto.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. And I really appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate what the previous 2 speakers said, because I think it really drives home how it doesn't matter where we're from, our opportunities and our obstacles tend to be the same. So I just wanted to, I want to go back to conversations we had last year at this meeting about some of the things that we're facing in the US in terms of additional obstacles or difficulties over the past few years in terms of our international collaborations. So I think what many of us have been dealing with are issues in terms of undue influence on research. And as if you're in a research administration, you know, you have a responsibility to your faculty, you have a responsibility to your university to make sure that they're doing things appropriately and, you know, kind of keep them out of trouble. So I won't go into all the details because I think we all know it of where a lot of this started. And I think, at least I will speak for myself, but I don't think that we're unusual, is that we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to manage the expectations of the federal government and our federal agencies in terms of how we manage international collaborations. And I think it was difficult. You know, it was difficult to come up with that balance. I mean, obviously, we want to create a culture of diversity. We want to create a culture of collaboration, but at the same time, we have to acknowledge potential problems and we have to be able to manage them. So I will say from our perspective, we spent about a year working with risk management and research and legal, and it was kind of like passing the hot potato. Who, you know, people didn't really want to be responsible for this, but we had to be responsible. And to be honest, some of our early discussions really focused more on, you know, 30 seconds of, yes, collaborations are very important globally, and here are all the things you can't do, and here are all the forms you have to fill out, and here are the forms that just changed. And, you know, it was a lot of research compliance. And it was difficult. It was very difficult for our foreign national faculty. It was very difficult for our trainees because they were one step removed. So they really didn't understand what was going on. And then COVID hit. So the impact of COVID on our especially our trainees has, and I'm sure this is true, you know, across the world. In New Jersey, we were hit very hard in the beginning. We had a lot of students who wanted to go home and couldn't. They couldn't get back to their families. We had students who had come here from other countries who really had not developed a support system. Some of the students that we had who could not go home, we had to keep them in dorms and they had to be isolated. So you can imagine you're here, you're new from a foreign country, you don't have the support system that you would normally have, and now you're isolated in a dorm room somewhere. So it was very difficult for them. And then, and you know, on top of dealing with everything else. But you know, as I've thought about this meeting, I've thought about the discussions that we had last time. I actually read an article, and I'm going to put it in the chat room because for me, it was kind of a whole really interesting way to look at it. And that is to step back and say, what is the value to all of us to collaborate globally? So scientific globalism versus scientific nationalism, which actually have to coexist, and they do coexist. But, you know, on the one hand, every nation has scientific nationalism. They want to be able to claim everything they want, you know, obviously to keep their intellectual property to themselves. On the other hand, scientists want to collaborate. So this article, and it was written by a group, and I think it's the Institute of Higher Education in Arizona. So I don't know if anyone's on from Arizona. And they really took a look at what has happened to international collaborations since COVID. So first of all, I mean, if you just look back to things that were published a year ago, so 20% of all research of our research publications have at least one international author. So we're already doing an incredible amount of collaboration. Number two, the highest impact articles tend to be those with international collaborators. So that was where we were a year ago. And where are we now? We've increased the number of global collaborations. We've increased the number of publications. And what they found is that those increases happened more frequently among groups that already had a relationship. So, you know, going back to what was said, you know, in the previous talks, I think what has come out of COVID is, you know, if we weren't convinced before that international collaboration is absolutely critical on a global, obviously on a global level, but critical for every nation involved, then I think that, you know, if there's a positive side to COVID, I think what it's really shown, and you know, there have been publications in the past, is when it comes time, when we're in a global crisis, that scientists do come together and kind of push this scientific nationalism aside in order to collaborate and to move things forward. So for me, at least, it's kind of changed the dialogue in terms of how we're managing some of the other issues that, you know, as research leaders in our institutions that we've had to manage. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scotto. I think we're going to have a really good discussion at the end. And again, I would encourage people to be thinking about points and possibly even placing them in the chat box. We do have one more speaker before we start the discussion time, and that is Dr. Shuk-Mei Ho. Welcome, Dr. Ho.
Thank you. I'd like to share my slides right here. There are 3 slides which basically just summarize some of the things that has already been touched upon. So international collaboration, contribution, and barriers. Obviously, we already covered the benefits, share knowledge and skills, access to unique facilities and equipment, increase cultural and personnel diversity, and also attract new talents and build a very stronger pipelines. We also have additional access to additional funding opportunities. For example, all these European Union funding opportunities, as well as a lot of the stronger Asian research opportunities. But the most important thing, I think, is as inspiration, aspiration, ambition, and reputations. These are all going to be enhanced. Now, what are the barriers? So barriers we're seeing recently are like visa and immigration issues, federal and state import and export regulations, such as restriction on materials and data sharing, and also intellectual property rules on both federal funded research and sometimes in various cases on the state funded funding sources too. We have very important issues that we have to deal with for conflict of interest and ethic laws, and also, as already has been alluded to, undue foreign influences. So this is actually really important also to recognize there are differences in academic standards as well as credentialing. For example, in many medical fields, credentialing is important. Now, finally, I think there are funding restrictions for supporting foreign personnel. So those are some of the barriers that I can kind of pinpoint. What are some of the countermeasures that we already have talked about and discuss often? I think some of the countermeasures may include, for example, have a very broad education and training for faculty and grant administrators. So before anything happens, we have to really educate the faculty. And also it's important to think about hiring processes and make sure the hiring process can actually incorporate some of these countermeasures. We have to strengthen the collaboration with several offices, such as the Office of General Counsel. We have to enforce very strict conflict of interest and research compliance policies. And this has to be taken up into a different level. Finally, I think it is important to provide the global or international colleagues supports on visa issue, travel issues. So our international office is going to be extremely important. Over on the campus wise, we really have to bridge the cultural and the racial divides. Oftentimes, we have some of our colleagues may have impressions that the jobs are being taken by foreign personnel. We have to develop as a campus or as a nation, a global vision across the system. So that's something that is a broader picture that I'm sure that we may not be able to address immediately. And these are some of the points that I can summarize for further discussion.